My hope in these situations that they realize the stupidity of these policies that they think are safeguarding their clientele. And I hope they realize that it truly is when the good guy has the firearm that can actually make a difference.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Not Your Average Gun Girls. We are happy to have our friend Bree Michael Warner with us, aka Tactical, awesome firearms instructor, and what I like to say now is a Hollywood conservative.
Yes, a rare breed.
Yes. Far and few between, but I think there are a lot more that are closeted.
Outspoken breed.
Yes. I think, most of them, if they do exist, they kind of live under a rock very quietly.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want to lose those jobs and that paycheck.
Yes, and that is a very real thing, unfortunately.
It's a very real.
We all got to live and pay our bills.
How do you balance it? I mean, you're very vocal about it kind of started out with like the firearm thing, but you've even gotten more vocal about like your political beliefs too, and you're still working. I mean, you're still in the industry.
I think I credit that to working. I work independently, but I also do work with a company, and I work with them pretty consistently. And I think it has a lot to do with crediting them and their openness. I think I always go back to they knew me before firearms became a thing in my world. So I think they already had gained that kind of respect for me as a person.
Yeah.
So it kind of, that supersedes whatever differences we might have politically. But I think honestly, that's the key. Like I will say 100% like on the acting side of things, once I became more open and vocal, especially on social media, and I unfortunately made the mistake of having my agents be friends on social media. It wasn't the best career move probably, but there was definitely, I could feel the sort of unspoken, like, oh, we're just going to put her over there. But on the behind the scenes, when I do more of like the line producing, accounting stuff, that world, I think those folks, they've known me before any of this. So like, they don't care. Now, I also, at the same time, I like to think that I at least carry myself well on social media, and I might have strong opinions, but I'm not so hard-headed that I'm not willing to have a discussion.
For sure.
So I think that's also makes a difference.
There's a finesse in how you do it. And I think, you're like like old school acting, like when you had to rely on agents to find your jobs, the casting process and all of that. I mean, like we're kind of in a day and age now that it does cater a little bit more to those who lean more conservative, especially if you are going to come out as like pro firearm or pro any of these other conservative beliefs. It's like there are other avenues now. When back then you had to rely on, I guess, the Hollywood machine to get jobs, but now you create your own content. There's so many platforms that you can do. You don't have to just rely on that. And then you're seeing other things like Gun TV. Yeah. That's how we met each other. Exactly. Like who ever thought that we would get to do what we love to do.
That was the best job
being in front of the camera and hosting and being in that space, but actually get to talk about the things that we love. Yeah. And be ourselves. And so I just think it goes to show like where we've come and where the industry has come, because, now you can just be like, well, fine, you don't want to accept me. Like, I don't have to be in your world. I'll go do my own thing and still like fulfill the artistic, creative side. Yeah.
And as you build relationships, and your relationships are basically how you get future work. Yeah. So once those relationships are established, it doesn't really matter who you are, like what you say publicly. I mean, it does matter, I guess, what you say publicly, but like if you can mind yourself well and you don't misrepresent anything, like I feel like, people want to work with you. Yeah. Ultimately, at the end of the day, and you guys doing this, obviously, it's the production world as well. You spend a lot of time with the people that you do, like we work with in production. You want to make sure that you like being around them. Like that's what it comes down to.
Exactly.
Because that makes for a very long day if you're not, if you don't really have that connection with somebody. And I think, more and more, maybe social media allowed us to be more open. I mean, I remember growing up and before social media became a thing, and nobody talked about politics. No, like that was just not a conversation that you'd have.
And it wasn't as overtly hostile if you didn't agree with someone. Like you could agree to disagree and just move on.
Yes. And I think I hope we can get back to that place again where we can still, be friends. I mean, I have a lot of people that I know in entertainment, unfortunately, that maybe not only don't agree with me, but they're so hard-lined about that I've lost friends. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I have people that I thought I was very close to, and I'd go and I look and I'm like, oh, great, they unfriended me. for whatever reason. I posted
Right.
something that they didn't like. And it's like,
I mean, that's
okay.
just so sad. It's sad and
Yes.
kind of just,
It's silly.
really, you know, it's just like, come on.
Yeah. And maybe in the beginning, it might have bothered me a little bit because, of course, like, everybody wants to be accepted for who they are. Like, nobody wants to feel like they're, you know, like they're being dismissed or anything to that effect. But I think at the end of the day, you know, you have to be true to who you are. And even if that means losing people, I mean, there's people that have lost touch with family members because they don't agree on things. I like to think that a lot of us on the conservative right don't behave that way. We're much more open to at least having that discussion, or like you saying, agree to disagree. It's fine. We can be very, we can be very easygoing about it. But unfortunately, I don't feel like we always get that in return.
No, I don't think I've ever unfriended somebody on social media if I don't like your post, or I can completely hold my own opinion and disagree, but I've never unfriended them. I'm like, free to be you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Do you, I'll scroll on past it. Like,
exactly.
We don't agree. It doesn't mean anything, but like you, I mean, I've lost lots of friends over, my stances on things, and so be it, because then I've gained a lot of friends that are even stronger friendships from, just being me and not worried about it.
And I think too, I mean, I like to think that a lot of people that I've been sort of friends with over time, I've seen even their opinions change on things based on current events, where they might have thought or said something in one situation. And then, I kind of stay out of it. I let them, like you said, you be you. And then all of a sudden something happens that they go, oh, well, maybe I do think differently. I mean, I know, like when I was in New York, basically when they were having a lot of the riot situation, people that I knew that were very anti-gun were suddenly calling me going, you know what, I'm rethinking this. I'm seeing that the police, the response times are not there. I'm fearful for my family. Like, I want to be able to do something for myself. And now all of a sudden they're having a completely different perspective. And I think that we will start to see more and more of that. I know even with the recent shooting, like that's a great, unfortunately these life events that are occurring, these stories that are making national news, they're heartbreaking, but at the same time, I think we're learning a lot from them, and people's opinions and attitudes are changing because of them.
Well, that's actually what we wanted to talk to you about today. So we had a guest on last week. We had Grant Stinchfield on, and we were talking with him about what just happened with the Greenwood Mall shooting, and really wanted to get your perspective as a firearm instructor about how, I mean, this is happening more and more. I mean, we're hearing about it. While it did happen in the past, like, I don't know if we just were hearing all the time about it, unless it was like a school shooting, but now it just seems like we're hearing more and more about it, and we're getting more women that are coming to us and they're a little bit more fearful or wanting to start being more prepared when they leave their house. How is that changing your training? I kind of want to talk about, because this is such an unbelievable case study here on this guy. We're talking about a guy, 22 years old, who pulled out a handgun and in 15 seconds at 50 yards took down a shooter, 10 rounds, 8 shots hit him.
Yeah.
How much are you doing that type of training with the women that come to your courses?
It's funny. I actually started, I mean, I myself as the student, and I think it's, as an instructor, it's always important to always remain the student as well, because there's always something more that I can learn. And even in my own personal training, for me, I had done scenario-based training, and we were using what's called like UTM or simunition rounds. And essentially those are rounds, they're not lethal. They are filled with almost like a soap, like powdered soap substance. And it's just for marking, as it hits land. But basically what it does is it helps you train in that 360-degree environment, because that's the other thing too. Like most people, when they train, they go to a range, they have a static, target that's downrange. It's in a very controlled environment. You're only shooting downrange, and you're not really having to think about all the other things. I mean, with the mall situation, you're dealing with a 360 degree. So you have people all around you. And from my understanding, like, not only did he take action immediately and jump to it without thinking twice, but at the same time, he was also directing people to safety, which is, I mean, for someone who doesn't have a police background, doesn't have a military background, that's really remarkable. And from what I understand, I don't know the full story, but from what I understand, he had basically, his grandpa taught him how to shoot. Now, I don't know what his grandpa did. I don't know what that level of training was. I don't know what the conversation or the mindset was. But the fact that this kid, I'm 46. So to me now, I'm like 22.
22 as a kid. Like,
that's a young man. And for him to have the wherewithal in that situation to not only take that action, but to be so precise. Now, yes, people can, I'm sure there's going to be people on the other side of the conversation. So, oh, well, he had 2 flyers, basically 2 rounds that didn't hit the target. 100%, I get that. And when I train people, I always tell them you are responsible for every round that leaves your weapon. So, you know, the story turned out great. It was amazing. His performance was spectacular, given the fact that he was a civilian who acted instantly. But at the same time, like, you know, yeah, it could have gone a different way if those 2 shots had landed with an unintended target. But I think at the end of the day, what the more important story is that he didn't, and he took action. I mean, I got to say, when I train people, I usually tell them, like, look, in my book, for the average shooter, for the person that just goes and trains once in a while, 25 yards is kind of like you're maxed out. Most ranges, ranges that you would go to, like a handgun range, are about 25 yards. Generally speaking, the average person does not train past 20 yards with a handgun. Rifle, different story. But the fact that this kid, I mean, that is some good shooting. That fast under duress. We're not talking.
And like, we're talking about like that fast, but it's like you were saying, you know, when you're at the range, your mindset is already like, you know, you're at the range, you're going to be shooting. He's walking through the mall. Who knows what he was there doing? You know, I need to run in there and I need to pick up a gift. And then all of a sudden, within like hearing what was happening, able to respond that fastly, and not just physically, but that connection of sound to mind, to telling to being able to process what he needed to do and make sure he got his shots on and took care of what he needed it's to me is on another level that none of us I feel are actually truly training at. And we don't know what his training is. Like we talked about that with Grant, like who is his trainer?
I hope we get more information. I hope this guy starts to give interviews and he can talk. He's probably in some litigation, not litigation necessarily, but he's probably just not talking a whole lot right this second while they figure all this stuff out.
And we talk about it, but I think this is where that type of simulation training is so important that we need to be adding into our lives as people who are going to be concealed carrying, because it completely changes your reaction. It changes, I think, your mindset. It better prepares you to understand in the, oh shit. Yeah. Like I was not ready for that. I was not, because we've done the simulation training before with NRA, and it's just, and even the ones that we did with Dom, like when he had us like in the dark, it is a complete mindset shift that no matter what, like I've said, it's not realistic, but I need to be doing this every single day. Yeah.
Well, and talk about how important is the type of firearm that you're going to conceal carry in order to even be accurate at 50 yards.
Well, that's it. I mean, I don't know. I know he used a Glock. I don't know. I haven't really read anything if they said specifically which one or what caliber. But I mean, I think too, like this kid is basically going up against a rifle. So there's so many things about this story that are really remarkable and just really say a lot about whatever whether he's just naturally a very good shot, or the other thing too, and it has a lot to do with someone's mindset, but like his ability to have such composure and probably so calm and collected despite the circumstance. And I think that is something, lots of training can help to make you comfortable. It can make you proficient, but having that mental stability to be that controlled and comfortable and confident. Because that's the other thing too. Like I tell people that, look, you have to decide. You have to be self-aware to know where your comfort level is, what you are capable of doing. Most people, I would tell them, do not engage at that distance, not with a handgun, because most people probably won't be able to perform to the level that he did. That's just the true story. So you have to be aware enough to know what your comfort level and also what your circumstance. If you're at the mall and you've got, 2 or 3 kids with you, how are you going to be able to safeguard not only yourself, but your children, and then also take action? So you have to know what your circumstance is. He was there with his girlfriend. It sounds like she also jumped into action. From my understanding, she put a tourniquet on one of the victims. Like,
oh, I didn't hear that.
This couple,
wow,
they're awesome.
Asset right there.
Yeah, I mean, like
She had a tourniquet?
Whether they used a tournament or they used a makeshift in the field,
but
she
stepped in. She stepped in, and
so it's
wow.
They obviously, this is not the first time that they've thought about the what if situation, and I think that's a really important.
Is there something? You're going to a movie theater or you're going out to eat? and even I'll ask you this too, like, are there mental things that you do on a regular basis that would put you in that mindset or prepare you to say, okay, like, do you take a breath and a beat every time you go out to eat or to the movie theater and say, if this were to happen, here's what I would do? Like, just to prepare yourself?
I don't think I do a full kind of mental planned out, but I am doing things that are like, where are my exits?
Yeah.
Kind of where am I sitting in relation to the exits, kind of making those type of notes of like the kind of people there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I'm not running through, okay, I'm here. What am I going to do if this happens at that time? I do think about that in my daily life, but not as I'm about to go to the movies or go to eat.
What about you?
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's a combination of that. I think it's like you said, exits, like wherever your safe egress is going to be, like that. I think that's important for anybody, whether you're at an event, you're at a movie theater, you're at a dinner. I tend to always be someone I like to be facing the doorway. I do not want my back to the door.
Yeah.
Especially like, if I was someone that was kind of wanting to be just oblivious or not wanting to engage, like maybe it wouldn't be an issue or I wouldn't think about it. But the fact that like I am somebody who wants to see what's happening at any given time, making sure that your back's not to a doorway that could potentially be a threat. Right. And then having conversations in advance, even with my husband, like, all right, my husband loves the what if game to the point where it almost gets somewhat irritating because it's like his what if games go to like the world's just imploding and it's like, I don't know where there's hope. But, while it's, kind of funny sometimes and we laugh about it because it's like we take it to the extreme.
It's good exercise.
But it's a very good exercise because we don't know what's going to happen. And I think it's important whether, we always talk about this too, like self-defense isn't always just about the firearm. There's so much that goes into it. Like in the mall situation, yes, the guy was armed and it was brilliant because I think their constitutional carry just went into effect July 1st. So like it was like so recent that they allowed for
I didn't know that.
Wow. But okay, does it not also irk anybody? Like the reports were coming out that this guy was sitting in the bathroom for an hour with multiple firearms.
Yeah.
How did he get them into the bathroom with nobody seeing him? How does no one in the bathroom?
I assume there hasn't been any video footage released.
No.
Right?
So these are my questions.
Even like people's cell phones or
there probably has. They've all been probably
taken down
or at least retrieved for prosecution. I mean, obviously, like at this point, it's we know what the situation is, but I think. From my understanding, he maybe had a backpack. So it's possible that he had field stripped them where they were just basically, not in so many parts, but enough to where he just would go into a stall, he can reassemble. No one would probably know the difference. I don't know if it doesn't take an hour to reassemble a firearm. So my guess is that there was a lot of psychological, like, playing in the mind of whether or not he's going to do. I mean, I don't know. All I know is that they said he was recently evicted from his apartment, or he just got notice that he was being evicted. So I don't know if that plays into it. Obviously the kid is young. He's 20 years old. That's equally as a child. Yeah. The thing that I'm really curious about, because this I think it will say a lot about our hero of the story. But when the shooter emerged from the bathroom, I'm very curious, like, how far into the food court did he get? Was he in the threshold of the door? Because the thing what's fascinating to me about, the hero in this situation is that shooting at that distance is difficult enough, especially with a handgun. Shooting a moving target at that distance is the other thing. And I'm wondering in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if the shooter, if the bad guy, if we will, if he was standing in the threshold of the door, he's kind of in what's called like the fatal funnel. So he doesn't really have a lot of area to go left and right. My understanding is he did, like, originally he retreated into the bathroom. But before that occurred, he's probably standing static, which is, that in all of the circumstance, that would have been the most ideal because it at least allowed our hero of the story to be able to engage that target without a lot of lateral movement. Because most people, if you're not law enforcement or military, you don't train shooting and moving. But honestly, like as the civilian, as a person, that's the type of training you should be doing. Right. Because if that is the case, if that kid was standing still in the threshold of the bathroom, that was his first mistake because it basically it allowed Dickon to actually engage that target without it being a moving target. So again, I don't know. I haven't seen footage, but I'm very curious because if it's a moving target, that's a whole other challenge. Like
that's what I had brought that up with Gar. I'm like, how did most of us are standing there? We shoot, we take one shot, we assess, and breathe, we line up
restart,
again. That is boom, 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 10 times in a row, hitting him 8 times.
Yeah.
If he's moving, are you kidding me? Like, there's just so much that
I think, and once we get through whatever is happening, legality with them and whatever they're trying to do with the police and the situation, and video eventually starts to emerge, I think there's going to be a lot more conversation and assessment and education on what was done, how was it done, what could have been done better, or what shouldn't have been done.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing I'm hoping comes out of this that I actually loved, I was reading an article that they were talking about, I think it's Simon, it's basically the developer that runs all these malls. They have properties all over the place. And obviously, like, so I heard a crazy story on The View. Apparently they came out saying, oh, well, he wasn't legally he was legally like he's allowed to constitutionally carry. So that's the law.
Yeah.
The policy, which is not law, the policy of the mall was, apparently no weapons. However, that didn't seem to stop the bad guy.
Right.
So there's that.
It never does, right.
And what's interesting is that the I think the CEO basically of Simon Properties had actually, when the reporters had asked, well, like, how do you feel about that? He declined to comment. My hope in these situations that they realize the stupidity of these policies that they think are safeguarding their clientele. And I hope they realize that it truly is when the good guy has the firearm, that can actually make a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times you go to the mall, and no offense, but like the mall police officers, they're not armed. So what would they have done in that situation? They would have had to wait for local law enforcement to arrive. The fact that this kid didn't listen to the policy of the mall, even though he was lawfully allowed to carry, that actually was the thing that made all the difference in the world. So I'm hoping that a lot of these establishments will start to see that and maybe redraft some of those policies that they have.
Well, if, before we wrap up and go, what would you say, like if someone's coming to you and they want to get like the top 3 tips of like, say, hey, I want to practice this. Like I want to be in the best situation that I can be if this were to happen to me at the mall, what would be your top 3 things that you would tell them, this is what we're going to work on right now? And then obviously you build on that, but like, where do we start?
So I would say, number 1, check your local ranges, find out who the trainers are in the area. If you can get into that scenario-based training, that's key, because you'll realize in those moments how fast things escalate. People don't realize that. They watch movies and you think you're going to anticipate, but when something catches you off guard, most people either they have the flight or fight mechanism. So either they freeze or they take action. You don't know who you're going to be until you get into that moment. So scenario-based training, super, super important. A lot of places do offer it. And like I said, I think that is a very eye-opening experience. The other thing is I would say, training under duress. So a lot of classes that I've even taken myself, and even some of what I've been training for other people, is get your heart rate up. Do some do a quick run, do some jumping jacks, get your heart rate up. Good. See how that affects your ability to shoot. Because once you become out of breath, you're fatigued, you're basically exacerbated, you're trying to get air. All these factors will affect how you shoot. And if you're only ever going to the range and just shooting in a very nice, sweet, controlled environment, you will never know what that's like to shoot out of breath. And when you're anxious, you're going to be out of breath.
One thing too, he didn't have Air Pro, eye Pro. The noises even amplified even more. I mean, wow, this is crazy.
And that's the other. I mean, I would never recommend training without Air Pro.
Without your Air Pro and eye Pro.
But there is something. Basically, your body is kind of a strange mechanism. So when you are that focused, there's studies on this where the blood flow is so focused. Your eyes are what's bringing in your information. That's how you're assessing what's happening in your world. The blood flow goes to that region. And what's crazy is a lot of times that first shot, although we might think, oh my gosh, it's deafening, literally, they don't even actually hear it. Now, subsequent shots, it's very possible that your your brain will start to tune
Once
in.
it catches up,
But
right?
that first shot, sometimes you don't even hear it. But I think at the same time, it's like you have to also know that in those situations that will be a very real situation that you're going to get in where you might have, some hearing loss temporarily. Most of the time it won't last forever, but these are real things and you're not going to be used to that. So I think, the other thing is that mindset. Really, besides the scenario-based training, really thinking about what you're willing to do. Also think about what your situation is. Know your own proficiency level. Know what you're comfortable doing. Know your circumstance. If you're with family that you feel like you can't direct your attention to something other than your family, which I totally respect. It's okay. But you have to know what your limits are.
Right.
And if you feel confident enough, and also, the other side, unfortunately, is that you have to know that, again, every round that leaves your firearm, you are accountable for. So, there could be a situation, unfortunately, where if you have an errant round that does hit an unintended target, while you may not be charged, on a criminal level, on a civil level, you might be. And that's unfortunately, that's part of you taking action.
Yeah. So good, Bree. That was amazing tips. Now that you're here in Dallas, we're going to have you back on the show all the time. But briefly tell everybody where they can find you and find out more information about what you're talking about.
Sure. So I'm on all the social medias. Tactigal NYC is my Instagram. I'm on Facebook.
Are you going to change that to Tactical?
Yeah, it needs to be Tactical.
I know, right? Well, it's funny because I was never thinking I was going to leave New York when I came up with my handle. So now I have to rethink that because, it's very true. I mean, now
we can come up with something very good for
you.
Well,
and it's funny because I get a lot of calls. And all of a sudden now I'm getting a lot of calls for more training, but they're all in New York. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I just left. And they're all like, congratulations. Don't be sorry.
I love it.
So yes. And then I have a website, tactigalinc.com. So all of those areas. And like I said, I love when people reach out and ask me about gear or needing information. If I'm not in your area, but you're looking to find training, I'm always happy to help source some quality training just from the circle of people that I know. Because I feel like, a lot of times people don't know where to begin, but you have to begin somewhere.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Bree. We can't wait to have you back on the show. And thank you guys for listening. And until next time, we'll see you. Not Your Average Gun Girl Show and its related companies, Alexo Athletica LLC and Stami Tactical LLC, shares information that may potentially have legal implications for its listeners. A reminder that laws vary for each state, and we encourage listeners to seek local legal advice to understand applicable laws. Any items, services, products, and advice mentioned during the Not Your Average Gun Girl Show should be used at your own discretion in accordance with your local and state laws, and you should follow applicable manufacturer's instructions. Not Your Average Gun Girls, Alexo Athletica LLC, and Stami Tactical LLC cannot be held liable for your actions based on the information shared.